Ladies and gentlemen, imagine standing at the precipice of your future, knowing that change is not only inevitable but necessary for the next chapter of your life. You're stuck between who you were and who you are destined to become, wondering if you have the strength to bridge the gap. Have you ever found yourself in that place, questioning your ability to make the changes you need to make? Today, I'm here to remind you of something powerful. You have the grace to make those changes. And I'm not talking about the type of change that comes easy, the kind where everything falls into place with little effort. I'm talking about the kind of change that challenges your very foundation, the kind that forces you to confront the past, deal with the present, and step into the unknown future with faith. But here's the good news: you don't have to face it alone. Change is often viewed as a disruption or an obstacle, something that comes with uncertainty and discomfort. But the reality is, change is a necessary part of life and often a key part of our spiritual journey. In the context of faith, we learn that change is not just a challenge, but an opportunity. It is in times of change that God works in the deepest parts of us, revealing His purpose and aligning us more closely with His will. Change, though often difficult, serves as a tool for growth and transformation. When we look at the story of Noah in Genesis, we see a man living in a time of great wickedness. The earth had become corrupted and humanity had lost its way. But in the midst of this, Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. What made Noah stand out was not just his righteousness, but his willingness to change, to embrace a life that was different from the world around him. While everyone else was caught up in sin, Noah chose to obey God's call to build an ark, even when it seemed foolish to those around him. This story is not just about an ark and a flood. It's about the power of God's grace to move someone from a place of fear and uncertainty to a place of destiny and purpose. God's plan often involves change, and it is His grace that enables us to navigate through it. When change is difficult, we have to trust that it's not just happening by chance or because of circumstances beyond our control. There is divine purpose behind every change, even if we don't see it right away. In fact, God uses change as a means of refinement, stripping away what is unnecessary and bringing us into alignment with His will. His grace empowers us to make decisions that might seem impossible, to make choices that reflect His heart, even when they go against the tide of society or our own desires. The grace to make changes is not about making a simple decision to do better or to live more disciplined lives. It's about stepping into something unfamiliar, trusting God to guide us through the unknown. Change, especially significant change, requires a level of courage that only comes when we realize that God's grace is greater than any fear or obstacle we face. It is not a passive waiting for things to change on their own. It's an active participation in the process, trusting God's hand is upon us as we take steps toward the transformation He has planned. What makes this so powerful is that we don't have to make changes on our own strength. When we receive God's grace, it becomes the fuel that empowers us to take those steps, even when they seem daunting. Grace enables us to endure the growing pains of change, to withstand the doubts and fears that naturally come with the unknown, and to find the courage to move forward. God is not just asking us to make a change. He is walking alongside us through every moment, offering His grace to strengthen, guide, and support us. So when change seems overwhelming, remember that it is not something you have to face alone. God's grace is always available to help you navigate the challenges ahead. And as you lean into that grace, you will find the strength to not only survive the change, but to thrive through it, coming out stronger, wiser, and more aligned with God's perfect plan for your life. God's purpose in change is never random. Change is often a tool in God's hand used to shape, mold, and direct His people into the fullness of what He has planned. It's not about change for change's sake, but about the divine orchestration of events and circumstances designed to bring us closer to His purpose for our lives. The Bible teaches that everything in our lives, good and bad, easy and difficult, works together for a greater purpose. Change serves as a mechanism to fulfill that greater purpose, aligning our lives with the will of God. When we face moments of transition or upheaval, it can often feel as though we are wandering through the unknown, not sure where the path is leading. But from God's perspective, change is never a detour. It is part of his design for our growth and spiritual development. The times when we are most uncomfortable, when we feel the tension of change pulling us in different directions, are often the moments where God is refining us. He is working behind the scenes, using the situations that seem to throw us off balance to form us for something greater. In the book of Genesis, we see God working through moments of profound change. The world had become a place of great wickedness, and it grieved God that he had made man. The corruption of the earth was so severe that God decided to destroy everything except for Noah, who found grace in his eyes. God's decision to wipe the earth clean and start over with Noah was not an act of cruelty. It was a purposeful intervention. God's plan for humanity was still intact, and he needed to bring about change to restore that plan. This drastic change was part of God's redemptive purpose. It was not just about destruction, but about setting the stage for renewal. When God calls us to change, it's often to align us more closely with his divine will. We may not always understand why certain things happen or why we are being asked to move in a new direction, but it's important to trust that there is purpose behind the change. In the case of Noah, God's purpose was clear. He was creating a new beginning, a fresh start for humanity. The change that came through Noah's obedience did not just save him and his family, it saved the future of mankind. Sometimes we resist change because we don't understand the purpose behind it. But God is never random in his decisions. Every step he leads us through, every change he allows has a specific purpose. Whether that change is personal, professional, or spiritual, God is always working to align our lives with his greater plan. When we are in the midst of change, we might be tempted to focus solely on the discomfort or the challenge it brings. But it's important to remember that change is a part of God's broader narrative. He is the author of our stories, and he is continually rewriting the chapters of our lives to bring us closer to his heart. The purpose of change is not always clear in the moment, but as we look back, we can often see how God was working through it all, guiding us and preparing us for something greater. Change may feel like an interruption, but in reality, it is part of the divine process that leads us into the fullness of God's will. When we learn to trust in God's purpose for our lives, even in times of change, we can move forward with confidence, knowing that he is always in control and his plan is good. The power of grace is a concept that goes beyond human understanding. Grace is not merely an abstract idea, it is a divine force that transforms lives and enables us to do what we cannot do on our own. Grace is what empowers us to make changes that we think are impossible. In our own strength, change can seem overwhelming or unattainable. But when we tap into the grace of God, it becomes not only possible, but natural. The change we seek is not always about willpower alone. It's about the strength we receive through God's grace to move forward. Grace is what makes the impossible possible. When we are faced with a need for change, whether in our habits, our relationships, or even our circumstances, it can feel as though we are being asked to step into a gap that we can't cross on our own. We may feel like we lack the resources, the wisdom, or the strength to make those changes. But grace works as a bridge, connecting our weaknesses to God's strength and providing the supernatural empowerment we need to take the next step. Grace allows us to overcome limitations. It gives us the courage to make decisions that we might avoid in our own power. For example, when we are called to forgive someone who has hurt us deeply, the natural instinct is to hold on to bitterness and anger. But grace calls us to forgive even when we don't feel like it and gives us the power to do so. It's not about white-knuckling it through change, but about leaning into the grace God provides, knowing that we don't have to carry the burden of transformation by ourselves. This is seen clearly in the story of Noah. Noah was faced with a task that seemed beyond human ability. He was called to build an ark to save his family and the animals from a coming flood. The task was monumental, and it came at a time when the world was filled with corruption and disbelief. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, and that grace enabled him to step into the challenge with confidence. It wasn't Noah's own strength that allowed him to build the ark, to face the ridicule and the doubts of those around him. It was the grace that God bestowed upon him. This grace was not a passive gift. It was an active force that propelled him forward. In our own lives, the grace to make changes works in the same way. It gives us the strength to let go of old patterns, to move away from harmful behaviors, and to step into new ways of living. This change might not come easily, and it may involve discomfort or a sense of loss, but the grace of God ensures that we are not in it alone. It transforms our hearts and minds, shaping us from the inside out. The change we need often feels daunting, but grace makes it possible to face the challenge, embrace the unknown, and trust that God's power will sustain us. Grace is not just about getting through difficult moments. It's about being empowered to make lasting, meaningful changes that align us with God's will. As we accept and rely on His grace, we are not only empowered to face change, but we are also equipped to thrive through it. The grace of God enables us to do what we cannot do by our own efforts. It makes the seemingly impossible change a reality, one step at a time. Faith plays a crucial role in the process of change, especially when the change seems daunting or beyond our reach. When faced with the call to change, it is easy to be overwhelmed by doubt and fear. The natural human tendency is to focus on the obstacles, the unknowns, and the risks involved. Yet, faith shifts our perspective. It allows us to see beyond the immediate challenges and trust that God is in control of the outcome. Faith is the anchor that keeps us steady when everything around us seems uncertain. And it is the fuel that propels us forward even when the path is unclear. Faith enables us to move forward when logic and reasoning tell us to stay put. It gives us the courage to take steps into the unknown, knowing that God is faithful to guide and sustain us. It's one thing to talk about faith, but it's another thing to put that faith into action. When God calls us to change, faith is the bridge that connects our current reality with the future He has planned for us. Without faith, change becomes a frightening proposition, but with faith, we can face the change head on, trusting that God's plan is better than anything we could imagine. Looking at the story of Noah, we see a powerful example of faith in action. Noah was called to build an ark in preparation for a flood that would wipe out the earth. At the time, there had never been a flood, and the idea of a catastrophic event of such magnitude was unimaginable. Yet Noah believed in God's word, and he acted on it. His faith did not waver, even when the task seemed absurd to others. For years, Noah worked on the ark, building it according to God's specifications, even though there was no immediate sign that the flood was coming. His faith was not based on his understanding of the situation, but on his trust in the character and promises of God. Noah's faith led him to take action. It wasn't enough for him to simply believe that the flood would come. He had to prepare for it, step by step. This is where faith becomes tangible. It moves beyond mere belief and becomes a motivating force that drives us to act, even in the face of uncertainty. Faith in God's promises propels us to make changes, to take risks, and to step out in obedience, knowing that God will provide what we need to succeed. Faith makes the impossible possible, not because of our own strength, but because we are trusting in the one who is greater than our fears, doubts, and limitations. Change may seem impossible at times, but when we put our faith in God, we open ourselves up to the possibility of transformation. Faith allows us to see the bigger picture, to trust that God has a purpose behind every change, even when we don't understand it. The key to making the changes we need is to have faith that God will equip us for the journey. Our faith enables us to let go of what is comfortable and step into the unknown, confident that God's plan for us is greater than any fear or challenge that we may face along the way. Faith allows us to not only endure change, but to embrace it. It shifts our focus from the fear of the unknown to the assurance of God's presence and provision. When we choose to walk by faith, we allow God to take the lead, trusting that He will guide us, strengthen us, and provide everything we need to fulfill His purpose in our lives. Faith empowers us to make changes that we would not have the courage to make on our own. It enables us to walk confidently into the future God has prepared for us, even when we cannot yet see the full picture. True transformation goes beyond simply making a decision to change. It requires action, effort, and perseverance. Change is not just about having a desire for something different in our lives. It is about taking the steps necessary to move from where we are to where God wants us to be. The journey of transformation involves more than just making up our minds to do something. It requires the commitment to follow through with intentional, deliberate actions. These actions may not always be easy or comfortable, but they are essential in bringing about the lasting change we seek. The process of transformation is not instantaneous. It takes time, effort, and dedication. When we look at the life of Noah, we see that his obedience was not a one-time decision. It was a sustained effort over a long period of time. For years, Noah built the ark in obedience to God's command, even when there was no sign of the flood that was to come. He didn't just believe in God's word, he acted on it consistently, even when others mocked him and the task seemed impossible. Noah's commitment to the process of change, building the ark, preparing for the flood, was a demonstration of his faith in action. It wasn't a quick fix, and it wasn't without hardship. But Noah's willingness to keep working, to stay faithful to the task God had given him, was what led to the transformation he experienced. In our own lives, the journey of transformation is often similar. We may feel the call to change, whether it's in our character, relationships, or circumstances, but the process of becoming who God has called us to be is not always easy. It's a long-term commitment to following God's direction step by step, day by day. This transformation involves setting aside old habits, letting go of the things that no longer serve us, and embracing new ways of thinking, acting, and living. Change can be a challenge, especially when the results are not immediately visible. True transformation is found in the consistency of our actions and the commitment to making the right choices, even when it seems hard or the progress is slow. The power of consistent action lies in its ability to build momentum over time. Small changes, when consistently applied, lead to big results. Noah didn't build the ark in a day. We cannot expect to experience complete transformation overnight. But as we remain faithful to the process, taking each step with God's help, the cumulative effect of our actions leads to the change we desire. The key is persistence, continuing to move forward even when the end result seems far off. The transformation comes not just from making the decision to change, but from the continual practice of change, from actively pursuing the path God has set before us, even when it feels like we're taking small steps. This principle applies to all areas of life. If we want to change our relationships, it requires more than just a desire for better communication. It requires taking consistent actions to listen better, understand more deeply, and engage in healthier patterns of behavior. If we want to change our habits, it requires more than just wishing for better discipline. It requires making small, intentional decisions every day to build better habits. Transformation is the result of deliberate and sustained actions that align with the changes we want to see in our lives. It's not about perfection, but about persistence, faith, and the willingness to continue moving forward. As we step into change, it's essential to remember that action is the key that unlocks transformation. Change does not happen simply because we wish for it. It happens because we choose to act. Every step we take in obedience to God, every decision we make to align our lives with His will, brings us closer to the transformation we desire. When we commit to the process, we position ourselves for the lasting change that God wants to bring about in our lives. And through consistent action, we begin to see the transformation unfold gradually and powerfully in ways we never imagined. We all face moments in life where we have to make a decision. Change is often uncomfortable, and the resistance we feel is a natural response to stepping into the unknown. But the truth is that we have the power to change. Each of us carries within us the ability to make choices that shape our future. The challenge is not about being able to change, but about having the courage to do so. It's about overcoming the fear, doubts, and insecurities that try to hold us back and stepping into the future God has designed for us. The power to change lies within our decisions, and it is through our choices that we transform our lives. There are times when we are confronted with the need to make a change, whether it's in our personal lives, our careers, or our spiritual walk. The question is not whether we have the ability to change, but whether we will embrace the challenge and make the necessary decisions. Making a change takes more than just recognizing that something needs to be different. It requires the willingness to take action, to make different choices, and to step out in faith. It's about deciding to leave behind the familiar and step into the unknown, trusting that God will guide us every step of the way. The ability to change is a powerful gift. Every decision we make, no matter how small, has the potential to shape the trajectory of our lives. But with that gift comes responsibility. We are called to make decisions that align with God's will for us. The changes we make should not be motivated by selfish desires or the approval of others. They should be guided by a desire to honor God and become the person He has called us to be. This requires self-discipline, discernment, and trust in God's plan for us. We must be willing to let go of what is comfortable and familiar, even if it feels uncertain or difficult, because God has something greater in store for us. At the heart of this process is the power of choice. Every day we are faced with choices that shape our future. Whether we choose to forgive, to take a step of faith, or to change a bad habit, each decision has the potential to lead us closer to the life God intends for us. But the decisions we make are not always easy. They require courage, commitment, and the resolve to move forward even when the path is unclear. The strength to make those decisions comes from the grace of God, who equips us to do what we cannot do on our own. Change requires that we make choices that challenge us to grow even when it's uncomfortable. It calls us to face the fears that try to hold us back and to step out into the unknown with faith that God will provide. It's not about waiting for perfect conditions or for everything to fall into place. It's about making the choice to move forward, trusting that God will be with us every step of the way. The power to change lies within our ability to choose. And when we choose to trust God and take action, we position ourselves for transformation. The key to change is recognizing that it's within our reach. We do not have to wait for the perfect moment or for someone else to make the change for us. The power is within us to take the first step, to make the decision, and to move forward with confidence. When we choose to embrace change, to make decisions that align with God's will, we unlock the door to a future that is brighter, freer, and more fulfilling. The power to change is not just about what we do in the moment. It's about the decisions we make day in and day out that shape the life we will live. Change begins with our choices, and through those choices, we step into the fullness of the life God has prepared for us.